A geography teacher is about to tackle forced immigration in class. How can he ensure that a lesson about the harsh realities of life as a Kosovan refugee really hits home? At O'Toole Community College in Haywards Heath, West Sussex, geography is a popular subject at GCSE, attracting over 100 candidates each year, and they get top marks, over 3/4 achieving A to C grade. This is one of the reasons why. Paul Ticehurst is a geography teacher here and an AST for thinking skills. In the last 5 years, thinking skills have become a hot topic. Research shows they give students skills that help them with both their school studies and in the outside world. But what are they?
The best definition of what thinking skills are is really trying to get students to understand how they learn, rather than focusing specifically on what they're learning. What strategies they learn to solve problems, to come to decisions, and then for them to sort of think, how can I use this strategy in a different situation? So if I've learned a skill that enables me to solve a problem or reach a conclusion or understand something, can I now take that skill and use it in a different situation? The idea is to give them skills that they can use throughout the whole of their life, and not just skills that will get them through a GCSE exam.
Some of you will find this easy, some will find
Paul's Year 8 class have been focusing on immigration. Today the topic will be refugees, but they don't know that yet. His first thinking skills activity is known as reading photos. The students will be paired up, and one of them will be given this photo of a Rwandan refugee camp.
One student in a pair is given a photograph, which they and they alone have access to, and the other student in the pair doesn't see it. And the other student has to try and find out what the picture is of by asking questions, to which the other student can only reply yes and no. And it is your task to find out what that picture is about, starting with very, very little knowledge or information about it. And you're going to do this by asking questions. This is one of the skills I want to sort of focus on today. Giving you the skills to ask questions, because that's a far more important skill than actually answering questions. Answering questions is relatively easy. So the people without the photograph have the hard task. The idea of this is sort of comes from the sort of parlour game where you have the name of a famous person on your head and you don't know who it is, but you have to find out who it is by deduction. The only response is yes, no. So you're trying to eliminate things.
I'd like you to move into position quickly now then, please. If you just turn around.
The problem I have is that I may have up to 15 pairs, 30 students, and 15 copies of the same photograph. So it's important that a student doesn't inadvertently or deliberately catch a glimpse of somebody else's photograph.
What I'd like you to do is open up to the centre page spread. Maybe I shouldn't use that phrase, but nevertheless. Turn up to the centre page. Big photograph there. Don't look around. Rebecca, you were looking around. Don't look at me anymore, sorry. Right, person without the photograph thing, can you now start to think of questions that you can ask to find out what it's a picture of?
Is there any scenery in it? Is it in a third world country? Are the people moving?
Yes.
You're trying to get the students to get as much information from that photograph as they possibly can, but even going beyond that, and that's the hard thing. You know, they're if you like, the visual images they've got, but I'm trying to get the students to go behind the visual images and perhaps try and think what happened before, what happened afterwards, what are the people thinking, what deductions can they make from the information that's in the photograph.
Do you think it's a poor country? Yeah. Dark-skinned? Yeah. Do you think they have a happy life? No.
The idea of asking questions is, this is a Year 8 class, and the aim really is by the time they get to Year 11 to give them the skills whereby they can ask questions of the kind of calibre that a journalist would ask.
Have they gathered on the purpose of something tragic?
Yeah.
The obvious weakness here is that only one pupil has the opportunity to learn from asking questions.
There's a shortage of something.
Paul addresses this by swapping their roles. The student with a photo asks questions of their partner to see if they have an accurate idea of the image.
What I want to do is reverse the process now, so that the person who hasn't got the photograph, the one who's got the image in their head, describes their image to the other person.
Is the scenery, like, far away?
There's the odd... I think there's hills or deserts or something in the background and just a few trees in the foreground.
Do you think that the ground is, like, bare and not grassy?
I think it's dusky because it might be in a poorer country.
OK, right, can we just finish there then, please? And I'm going to ask the people who haven't seen the photograph, what do you think we're looking at in this lesson? Frankie?
About population and how there's too many people.
Robert?
I sort of got an image of like loads of people all sort of gathered in one sort of place and really sort of very cheap to make houses.
I'd say it was like a crowd of people that were sort of moving to like refugee camp or something.
Refugee camp?
Yeah,
Why?
because I asked whether they were homeless or something, I can't remember, and she said, yeah.
You have an image of that photograph at the moment. I want you, when you look at the real photograph, to see how accurate is your image. Are you disappointed in the photograph? Are you disappointed the photograph isn't actually like the image you have in your head?
After seeing the photos, you could think of lots more questions that you could ask.
It was hard for me because she wasn't asking the right kind of questions to find out what the picture was about, and it was really annoying because I knew what it was.
There are two things that pupils get out of this activity, I think. I think, one, it's good fun and they enjoy it and it's different from something else. The other thing is it's developing their questioning skills. I suspect that we're very good at teaching students to read and to write, but I think we're less good at using other kind of resources and images and so on, particularly photographs. Photographs are important in geography, but I think it's important that they actually get beyond the superficial image of the photograph, and I think they get skills, the questioning skills and the studying of the photograph will enable them to look at that and do that.
Think of any group of people anywhere.
Thinking skills are an exciting class resource, but what are the implications for preparation time?
My strategy is that I can't produce enough resources to use all the time. So I look in terms of targeting a year group and say, right, I'm going to develop a resource here where I think the course has got a bit dry, a bit dull. I'll put something in there to enliven it for the students. And then I'll do it that way. I sort of rationalise the use of my time and produce what I can without busting a gut. I don't like that expression. I'll do as much as I can without sort of really creating too many problems for myself. But the other thing is that with one of these exercises, having produced it, I couldn't wait to teach it. It was about the third or fourth period in the day, and I really wanted the other lessons to get out of the way so that I could teach this particular lesson, because it sounds a bit corny, but I was actually genuinely excited about how the students react. And it was a fantastic lesson.
Okay.
Sticking with the refugee theme, the next part of the lesson is called Mind Movies. Before the activity, it's clear that pupils have a very hazy view of what a refugee actually is.
I don't know that much. I know that they come to, I think lots of them come to England, I've heard.
I didn't know a lot about refugees actually because I live in like a really nice house with a really nice family, and no one's ever told me that I've had to go to a different country to survive, basically.
By having to use their imaginations to actively engage in a story about a refugee boy, Paul hopes his pupils will get a small insight into what the life of a refugee must really be like.
Now, in a minute, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes, put your heads on the desk, settle down, be completely calm and relaxed. And when I think everybody is relaxed, in the right frame of mind, eyes closed, I'm going to do the activity. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a story. I'm going to read you a story, and I want you to focus on the story.
Mind Movies is an exercise designed for the students to use their imagination, to use their creative thinking skills. What it is, you need a fairly descriptive piece of writing.
You've made a film, it's to do with refugees, and I want you to imagine all of the scenes. I want you to imagine that you're at the cinema, you're watching the film for the very first time, and I want you to imagine the scenes.
The writing has to have some good, clear images. The idea is very, very simply that the students close their eyes, imagine that they're a film director or a film producer, and they've made a film of the passage that is read to them, and they have to imagine, they have to try and visualise they're in the cinema watching it for the first time.
So I'm going to ask you now to start settling down. It might be a full minute or so before I start reading. I will talk and give you a little introduction, then I will start reading. I need all your eyes closed. Put them down on the desk if you like. I can't stop you from falling asleep, although I will know at the end if you are asleep, because when I say open your eyes and sit up, you'll still be head down, so just be warned. But OK, this is the story of a 13-year-old boy called Boris. He describes how he came to be a refugee, and he describes what life on a refugee's camp is like. 2 weeks ago, my grandparents' house was raided by the Serbian police. It was the middle of the night, and we were all terrified.
Different people learn in different ways. You've got audio learners, you've got kinesthetic learners, you've got visual learners, and so on. A lot of traditional teaching relies on audio style, listening and digesting and perhaps reading and that sort of thing. The advantage with this is it appeals to students who are visual learners, who try and imagine what the scenes are.
The toilets are communal, although there are separate ones for men and women. At first I was too shy to use the toilets, but as with everything here, as the situation gets worse, you start to care less and less about such things. I have to return to the tent if I want to wash my hands. Each tent has been provided with a plastic bowl suspended by a tripod of sticks. Each tent has 1 bucket of cold water a day. As everyone has to wash in it, it soon becomes a disgusting grey, cold and slimy solution. If you can just look this way, and before you start talking about this thing you want to talk about, I'm going to give you the chance to talk about it. I'd be interested to know some of the things that people have remembered specifically. So somebody like to tell me something, the most powerful, what is the most powerful image in there? What's the thing that really you think you will remember?
At the end of when you were telling the story, it's like the refugee camps, the tents that they had to sleep in, and just having a bucket of water to have one every day, or queuing up for your food.
James?
Not being sure that they'll ever have anything to go back to, and their houses have been destroyed. And
yeah, I think this relates to their worries, you know. OK, so they're in the refugee camps, but probably that is their biggest worry, not having anything to go back to.
Okay.
Paul believes the key to thinking skills is giving the pupils time to think about how they're learning, not just what they're learning.
I want to talk to you just a little bit about the activity. What did you find it easy? Did you find it difficult? What sort of things did you find difficult about it? Do you think it will help you remember things? Do you think it will help you with your homework 4 or 5 hours later on today when you attempt it? Was it something you found easy? Did you find it easy to concentrate, for example, or did your mind wander? Alex?
I think the fact that we had to close our eyes and concentrate on what you were saying helped remember, because you can actually visualise it in your mind.
Good. Can you think of other situations where this exercise might be a good thing for you to help you with your studying, with your learning?
When you're trying to revise, you could read something from your book, close your eyes and try and make like a movie of it in your mind.
It's more powerful than watching some footage, to be perfectly honest. The students are bombarded by footage, they're bombarded by television images and all the same. I can remember when I started teaching, we used to get quite excited when the 16mm projector came round and we'd show a film on tractors going up and down fields in East Anglia, and we get quite excited. And it was quite exciting for the students. You know, they didn't very often have this sort of image coming. Then, of course, videotapes came in. And for the students, you know, watching that kind of footage is not unusual. I think you need to try and get something that's a bit different. This activity is different enough, and I think it does have an impact on them.
It's more active. It's not just copying from textbooks or doing writing off the board from what the teacher's written. It's more involved.
I think that it's really good because it actually helps you learn rather than, as Jenny said, copying out from textbooks. And it just makes you find the lesson more fun and you really do want to learn.
Just sort of ask yourselves, how much of this do you remember, and could you, if I said your
Paul would agree that thinking skills do require extra effort, but there are big rewards for both pupils and teachers.
If I say that sort of 3 years ago I knew about thinking skills but didn't apply them much, and then I started getting into producing my own materials, if we were to compare what I'm like now as a teacher with how I was before, I think I was competent. I would probably have been described as a good teacher. I think the difference is now that I think I'm a much better teacher because of these resources. A, I get a lot more job satisfaction. B, the performance of the students is much improved, and all of that has sort of worked together to sort of give me huge job satisfaction.